anticipate that humans would burn fossil fuels. I mean, it literally did not.
Yes.
And so it's almost post-biblical. Yes. It's like, what do we do? We have, I mean, there's this organization that came out, I'm going to be talking about it after we're done, this non-governmental NIPCC, non-intergovernmental panel on climate change, that has come out with this report saying, oh, everything's fine, it's just great, don't worry about it. Heartland Institute funding, and it turns out that it's being funded by a bunch of, it's a front group, it's a front group basically for an industry. There's an industry, there's 2 trillion, roughly, if my math is correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is about 2 trillion tons of carbon still underground that have been staked out by oil and gas and coal companies as, this is mine, this is on our balance sheet. They want to burn all that stuff. James Hansen just published a piece this week about what would happen to the world if they
We have about 5 times as much carbon in the declared reserves of the fossil fuel companies and the countries that act like fossil fuel companies as even the most conservative governments and scientists say would be safe to burn. We're sitting on a huge carbon bubble, and that's the logic really behind this divestment campaign that's sweeping the country. That carbon bubble, that determination to burn more than governments and scientists say could possibly be safe, that turns these guys from normal industry into a kind of rogue industry.
Right.
And it has already led 15 big cities, Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Providence, to commit to divesting from fossil fuels. 6 or 7 colleges already. Just this summer, the United Church of Christ, our oldest Protestant denomination, tracing its roots back to the Pilgrims, they said, look, we can't justify investing our money in companies that are basically running Genesis backwards, you know?
Right, right. On the other hand, or along with that, I guess, you know, divestiture, and we saw this in South Africa, it is a powerful and noble way to make a statement. It's a great way to draw attention to things, but it doesn't hurt the fossil fuel companies at all, because unless it's an IPO, they don't care who owns their stock.
Look,
so how do we go after them?
We can't bankrupt Exxon, but we can politically bankrupt them. I mean, when Nelson Mandela got out of prison, his first trip was to the U.S., and he went straight to California to thank students at the University of California who forced the divestment of $3 billion worth of apartheid-tainted stock.
Right.
He said, look, we liberated ourselves, but we couldn't have done it without this kind of support. You guys made this an issue. You pushed hard. You weakened our foes. We have to turn the fossil fuel industry into the tobacco industry, because the secondhand smoke is killing us all.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically dumping their waste for free in our atmosphere.
Absolutely. They're the only people in the world who get to put out their trash for free. And their trash, carbon dioxide, just happens to be the most dangerous thing on the planet.
Yeah. And so we have divestiture, we have people protesting. We now, I read recently that fracking, apparently there's about a 3% leakage of natural gas and frack oil.
No, actually, there was a new study this week showing low leakage rates. There was a NOAA study in January showing 6 or 8% leakage rates. One doesn't have a very good handle on it, but the real problem is we don't need, I mean, fracking to produce huge amounts of natural gas just provides us one more carbon-based fuel.
Exactly, but the president shouted out to this 2 days ago.
What we need is that transition to renewable energy, and we can see that it's possible. There were days this summer when the Germans generated more than half the power they used from solar panels within their borders, okay? This is Germany. Not many people, you know, head to Hamburg for their sun-spotted vacation.
It's the cloudiest country in Europe.
Think what you might do if you had, I don't know, Florida, Texas, Nevada, Arizona, California, Utah to work with. You know, you might really be able to get somewhere.
Yeah, we might. And we might be able to really make some serious changes in our energy portfolio. These transitions need to be driven by political action. They're not, I mean, this is how Germany got where they are.
The key decision coming up is whether or not the president will approve the northern leg of this Keystone pipeline or not. It won't be a total victory by any means if he blocks it. He's already approved the southern half, but the link across to the tar sands of Canada is a big deal. If the president said we're not going to build this, he'd be the first world leader to say, here's the project, it's been stopped because of its effect on the climate. That would be big. And among other things, it would allow us, I think, to start reopening these international negotiations about climate that hit an iceberg, to make some metaphor, at Copenhagen in 2009.
Yeah, yeah. In Australia, they just elected a new conservative government, and the head of that government today announced that he is closing the Office of Climate Science. It's got a different name, but that's basically the office. They're carbon watchdogs and environmental watchdogs. Thoughts on that?
Australia just went through the hottest summer they've ever seen. They had got so hot they had to take out new colors. The National Weather Service had to add new colors to their palette to illustrate just how hot it got. It is a great shame that the mining industry in Australia was strong enough to install their guy in power.
Do you think that's what happened?
I do think that's what happened. I mean, look, the pushback. You think we have media problems here? Rupert Murdoch owns about 70% of the newspaper readership in Australia. That's where Rupert Murdoch came from.
I know that.
He's one of their, along with coal, he may be their most noxious export. No, they were able. That's how that happened. I think they'll rue the day, and I imagine that there won't be long before they're wishing that they paid some attention to the signals that were coming from above.
Just to wrap this up in the minute we have left, once again this weekend, tell us what's going on, tell us about the movie.
There'll be 215 people can watch the movie about all this on Al Jazeera, but there'll be 215 demonstrations in 47 states asking the president to draw the line on the Keystone. And in some of those places, we'll be literally drawing the line. In New York, I think they're going to paint the point where Hurricane Sandy brought the storm surge in all the different boroughs. I'll be in Seattle, where we'll be making a big red line to try and stop Keystone and try and stop the coal trains that are threatening to come to the Pacific Northwest. There's 1,000 fights, but they're all part of one fight to keep this planet somehow habitable.
Right. And people can learn all about this at treaty50.org. There you go.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Great to have you with us.
Putting on the left are Appalachian.
When the Obama said, "Thank you, the phone's open, Mr. Miller." It's always like.
For tonight's Politically Corrected, I'm correcting Fox so-called News' reporter Doug McKelway. McKelway appeared on Wednesday's broadcast of Happening Now with Greg Jarrett to talk about this week's hearings on global climate change in the House of Representatives. During his discussion with Jarrett, McKelway brought up a new study by the Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change that, according to him at least, shows that global climate change is a lot less serious than the scientists say. Take a look.
Contrast that with the peer-reviewed findings of a new study that was released just today by the Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change. Quoting from it, NIPCC's conclusions drawn from extensive review of the scientific evidence is that the greenhouse gas-induced global climate signal is so small as to be embedded within the background variability of the natural climate system and is not dangerous.
What Doug McKelway didn't mention, though, is that the Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change study is far from an objective source. It's actually a joint project of fossil fuel industry front groups. In fact, the Heartland Institute, one of the NIPCC's major backers, has been called the world's most prominent think tank, promoting skepticism about man-made climate change by The Economist magazine. Of course, you didn't hear any of that in Doug McKelway's report on Happening Now, and that's why he's been politically corrected. Coming up, the phone lines are now open for our Your Take, My Take live segment. So if you want the chance to ask me a question live on The Big Picture, give us a call at 202-904-2134. Maybe I'll be talking with you after the break.